So if you watched yesterday's stream, you would know that we spent nearly 2 hours covering the most recent Jake Munro video, and apparently the world's busiest music nerd, aka one of the biggest morons on this platform, Anthony Fantano, made a video about Jake calling it, this guy is a dumbass. So welcome back to Words Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idol, and I figured, what wouldn't be the greatest follow-up to yesterday's stream than to cover Mr. Fantano's video, this guy's a dumbass, to see if he really knows what he's talking about when it comes to the music industry. Before we get into it, hit that subscribe button. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day, and really, this is just an excuse to rag on, rag on a vegan, but also just one of the most moronic accounts on this platform. So let's just get into it.
Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. I know I'm doing pretty great this morning because when I woke up, my YouTube algorithm, the content gods, decided they were going to bless me with a feast. This video on none other than Tim Pool's channel, a 2-hour-long torture session titled
There's my boy Brian right there. Look at that. Shout out Brian, Gasoline Invertebrate, making it on to the culture war. Just big ups to my boy.
Has infected goth, punk, and metal. MAGA must save the arts. Yeah, I can't wait to hear the Trump.
So if this is your guys' first time watching Anthony Fantano, first of all, I apologize for nothing. Second of all, yeah, you can already guess what this is mostly going to be about. Him coping and seething because he thinks that leftism is, you know, the right way to go about life, and that all art is inherently left-leaning. And did I mention he was vegan? I don't even have to mention he's bald. I mean, Jesus Christ, look at that. But I should keep the personal attacks to a minimum. But yeah, if he's gonna talk shit about my boy's appearance on a renowned show, then, you know, I think fair is fair.
Admin's new grindcore initiative they'll be releasing next month along with the Epstein files. Now, as some of you may know, we have covered Tim Pool on this channel before, specifically in regards to discussions around alt culture and punk and leftism. And typically when Tim...
Look at me, guys! I have a vest with patches on it. I'm punk!
Does embark on these topics, it is nothing short of a comedy show. But Tim, despite his big beanie and rat face being on the thumbnail of this video, seemingly does not appear in the discussion, which you would think is a blessing in disguise, but instead, this conversation is being helmed by 3 other total clowns. Frontman Phil Labonte of the band...
Oh, yes, the internet's busiest music nerd. Doesn't even get the guy's name right, Phil Labonte. So yeah, you know, you would think that somebody that is a music critic for a living would know how to say the lead singer of one of the most successful modern metal bands of all time.
And All That Remains, which, you know, he is a regular on the Tim Pool Timcast show at this point. We also have Jake Munro, some sort of right-wing goth social media figure who claims in this discussion to know everything about all of this stuff, so...
Which, based on what I've been learning about him as of late, thankfully mostly through Moxie Dame, yeah, dude's pretty knowledgeable on the alt-rock scene, on the goth scene, the scene. You guys get the point?
I'm sure his takes are going to be very informative here.
Hey, what's up? My name's Brian Graupner.
Well, let me tell you, again, the 2-hour conversation here.
Hey, what's up? My name's Brian.
Third guy. Brian Graupner, you know, Gasoline Invertebrate. You mean the dude who had a massive cult following when it comes to the industrial goth scene, only to be canceled by his own people because he said that maybe you shouldn't cut the cocks off of 12-year-old boys? Yeah, that radical take? Again, yeah, internet's busiest music nerd. I didn't see you do any sort of coverage of his most recent album, of which, by the way, I'm featured on, so go check that out. That's pretty cool. I saw other outlets writing about his most recent album. Where were you on that one? Did you not cover it because he doesn't align with your political sensibilities?
Brian Graupner.
Well, let me tell you, again, the 2-hour conversation these 3 men have together about goth and punk and everything else is loaded with bangers. And by that, I mean, like, globs of dog shit that you basically step in with every minute you continue to listen to this. You could pretty much hop into any point of this discussion, and they are saying something wrong. For example, at 1 hour and...
So, yeah, we are 2 minutes in, and you're just now getting to the fucking point.
17 minutes, you could see Phil Labonte trying to, after bringing up Earth Crisis, legendary vegan straight edge hardcore band who are.
Notice how he just had to throw vegan in there. Even when a vegan doesn't announce they're a vegan, which first of all, challenge impossible, but even when a vegan doesn't announce they're vegan, someone else will announce they're vegan for them. In this case, another fucking vegan.
Still very much active and performing after all these years, which Phil doesn't seem to know, despite bringing them up as if, he's like got the inside scoop on them and metalcore in general. And after an hour of bloviating about how open and accepting underground subcultures were back in the day before leftism and wokeness ruined them all, he brings up that dudes used to notoriously get punched out at these types of shows for doing something like lighting up a cigarette.
Even back then in the 90s, you could have differing opinions. Now, I will say that if you were in the 90s, if you were at a straight edge hardcore show, you better not light up a Marlboro.
And guess what? Maybe it's because the individuals that are, quote unquote, straight edge are the ones that always project the most. Like, it's so funny to me that he has this idea that, leftism is this great thing. It's so accepting. When I can pull up, let's just do a quick little search of the tube use here for one of my personal favorite music channels on the internet. Wyatt's Metal, great dude, friend of mine, give him a shout out. Almost 100 thou wow subs. Yeah, very quite openly right of the aisle sort of individual. Makes a lot of jokes at both sides' expense. Gets invited to festivals, plays at festivals, does coverage. Why is metal racist? Rant is insane. Cradleville Drama Explained. I mean, the dude knows his shit, and he's been doing banger videos for at least as long as I've known him. So, again, what are your thoughts? Can Wyatt's Metal apparently not have a proper opinion on music, despite the fact that he definitely knows his shit? Listen to his band, you would know he knows his shit. But yeah, no, Anthony Fantano was a fucking retard.
Okay, you better not light a cigarette. I've seen some bad things happen to dudes that thought that it was okay to smoke at an Earth Crisis show.
Geez. So non-confrontational, so not asking people to conform to rigid values and ideologies. Yes, that's what underground music has always been. And that's essentially the...
He was telling an anecdotal story, saying it as if it was the exception to the rule. But again, I wouldn't expect a leftist to understand the concept of the exception to the rule, because leftists don't even understand that there are rules.
Core issue with this entire discourse these guys are having. They're telling essentially two massive lies here: that alternative culture, goth, punk, what have you, has always been either mostly or completely apolitical, and two, given that lack of belief, there's no way these scenes would have any kind of exclusionary behavior going on based...
I mean, I would like to believe you when you say that they are saying this largely been apolitical, but the thing is, you're expecting us to just take your word for it as opposed to showing context, showing evidence, showing proof, anything of that nature. This is the definition of audience capture. He knows what his audience wants to hear. He is going to say it. It creates a feedback loop of confirmation bias.
On ideology, political opinions, or anything else, which if you've spent an hour in some of these places, much less an entire lifetime growing up in them, you know how bullshit that is. Even over seemingly unimportant things. Like, I've been turned away from a goth club in LA because my shoes were white. Now, given Phil's year...
I'll be real. I don't think it's because your shoes were white. I think there was a myriad of other reasons, none of which you look like an alleged sexual predator from 1976, and they were just using white shoes as an excuse because you look dumb enough to believe that excuse.
Years of involvement in the underground metal scene, in metalcore, in hardcore, you would think this man has more background about things like straight edge culture, vegan culture, hardcore in general.
I'm truly impressed at the ability to say vegan culture with a straight face. You notice how I can't do it even right now?
The ethos of bands like Minor Threat and all those that sprung off from them years to come. But if he knows any of this stuff, he's certainly not relaying it to the Timcast audience. And in fact, his only reference point for some of these genres going mainstream seems to be like the popularity of Hot Topic in the early and mid 2000s.
And Hot Topic had become, and still probably is, kind of the corporatist, superficial demonstration of the quote-unquote underground subculture.
Which,
I mean, he's not wrong in that assessment whatsoever. At this point, he just doesn't like Phil and doesn't like quote-unquote right-wing talking points, so he's looking for anything he can use to disagree with, even if it's something that he likely does agree with and is objectively true. So what is wrong with what Phil just said there? Because I'm sure even Anthony fucking Fantano would agree with that sentiment.
Ironically, I don't know, as a fan of loud rock, I would have always kind of categorized All That Remains as like a Hot Topic type metalcore band. You can literally go on Hot Topic right now and buy an All That Remains t-shirt. So like, why Phil
Oh no, capitalism bad is what I just heard.
is decrying the fact that like metalheads and punks and goths have more access to this culture through stores like that. I don't know. Like, dude, that's literally your core audience. Mall metalcore guys are your audience. But honestly, as clueless as Phil is as a host and a historian on these topics, the true cancer of this conversation is this Jake Munro guy.
I mean, that stuff was relatively inoffensive when you really it's all superficial, like these piercings can be taken out, tattoos can be removed, but of course now with the woke movement there has been a far more permanent addition to a lot of the ideologies, which is
So Jake is going to talk about gender affirming care and things to that effect, and of course ultra leftist communist Anthony Fantano is going to take exception to these factual statements that Jake is, I'm sure, about to make. Now, mind you, I'm just guessing, but I've gotten to know these lefty types pretty well, so I bet I'm spot on.
obviously the gender ideologies that has been introduced, which I think mainly is the largest contention people have.
And the more I hear him talk in this video, the more he comes across like a pretentious twat, and that's coming from me.
Okay, I was about to say, at least he has the self-awareness there.
In fact, I love this take that he has to give here.
Me and Brian here are the alternative voices that sort of contest the woke ideology, because wokeness is, by its very operation, a form of conformity.
Yep, that is factually accurate. And again, I'm pretty new to Jake Munro's content. Brian, on the other hand, I've known for a solid year and a half or so now. Like I said, no one well enough to be featured on his fucking album. He has done several appearances on my show. I've been on his show, so I can say with certainty that yes, Brian is a front runner in the anti-conformity, anti-woke space of industrial and goth music, and let me tell you, he does a good goddamn job at doing it. So if Jake is in that same crowd as well, which again he seemingly is, and frankly he has a much larger audience and much larger reach than Brian, no shade homie, it would seem that he is speaking absolute facts here.
And alternative and countercultures are meant to renounce any form of conformity.
Now, this whole anti-conformity rhetoric that Jake is spitting here sounds maybe good or believable on the surface, but it's wrong. And it's not that punks and goths and metalheads are interested in subverting authority or going against the grain culturally. They are. But to paint that intention as being completely uninformed about what direction it's going in or what specifically is being rejected in that anti-conformity stance, that is a lack of information there. I mean,
it's just him not conforming, ironically, to the political bias you have. Let's be real. Modern day punk and metal and goth and alt rock and any other subgenre, subcategory that you want to call it, absolutely conforms and bows and kowtows to the left-wing political advocacy groups. I mean, again, can anybody even take Rage Against the Machine seriously anymore? They are Rage for the Machine. What was it about this metal band? I mean, that canceled an appearance at a fucking festival because Kyle Rittenhouse was gonna be there. By the way, check that video out on my channel. Did that, a year or so ago. That was a good fucking time. When you've got metal bands canceling appearances at fucking festivals because, oh no, guy I don't like who was by all legal aspects completely found innocent of any even potential crime that was never a crime to begin with, when they're canceling appearances because my values and virtues, it's needless to say that these anti-conformity acts and mentalities, they've kind of lost their fucking way. You just don't want to admit that because they, again, bow and kowtow to your political sensibilities. This dude is a fucking joke. Anthony Fantano, for the internet's busiest music nerd, he's certainly not the internet's biggest political nerd because he does not know shit about how the political spectrum actually works, and really what the average everyday boots on the ground people think, including the average everyday individuals within these subcultures. Because if it was such a minority, if there weren't these sort of right-wing individuals or whatnot that listen to people like Jake Munro that are in these non-conforming subcultures, why would the dude have damn near 500,000 subscribers, right? Maybe they follow him because they are also part of these scenes, part of these underground niche scenes that were traditionally left-leaning, because it was the right that was doing all of these censorship and trying to force or by force maintain what can and can't be done via artistic expression. And maybe now that the polls have shifted, now that the roles are reversed, it makes sense for the sort of anti-authoritarian movements to be against the authoritarians, which in this instance is the left.
If you actually were just blindly rejecting any sort of conformity whatsoever, first off, that would put you in this never-ending cultural pendulum swing loop where the moment...
Yes. Yeah, that is literally what happens. A never-ending swing. Why do you think we have the phrase, the pendulum is swinging back, as in swinging back to the right? Guess what? In the 80s, when they were trying to bring down Twisted Sister, and heavy metal music and D&D and the Satanic Panic, it was on the right. And then it swung to the left, and they started canceling you for liking fucking tweets, and now it's swinging back to the right. And I'm sure it was happening before then as well. It's not like America was just somehow always right-wing, and then it just recently became left-wing. Well, no, the pendulum has been swinging. That's why the phrase is there. So the fact that you're questioning, if you were anti-conformity all the time, you'd be, just ever-changing pendulum swing. Yeah, no shit. That is, in fact, how it works. Why are you saying it like it's a question, like it's some unknown factor to you, aside from what I can only surmise is that you're so retarded that you don't realize that this is the case?
The moment things get too far left, you're pushing right. The moment things go too far right, you're pushing left. That's fucking stupid. That's
what's fucking happening. That's what's been happening. Again, the idea that you think that's stupid only goes to show that you aren't fucking stupid. You named this video, "This Guy's a Dumbass." I think I'm going to name my video, "Anthony Fantano's a Dumbass." And you know what? It probably ain't going to do so hot in the algorithm because, unlike Anthony Fantano, I don't have 2.5 million subs, and I will probably get punished for using that lingo. But I think it'd be funny, so I'm going to do it anyway.
complete lack of beliefs and principles. The idea these underground...
Did he just say it shows a complete lack of beliefs or principles? No, it's the opposite. It's called horseshoe theory. Once you go too far one way, you are the same as too far the other way. That's why the pendulum swings. Baldy here don't know about fucking horseshoe theory.
Genres and fashion trends were informed by nothing else other than just, I don't want to be like other people, is completely untrue, and nowhere is that more apparent in the very strong political positions that you'll find on records and in art from Crass or The Clash. Susie Sue from Susie and the Banshees was a staunch feminist who saw...
I noticed that you don't bring up, again, it's kind of funny you don't bring up the Sex Pistols. Is it maybe because Johnny Rotten actually aligns with the right wing, so you disavowed any potential punk cred from Johnny Rotten? Or you still upsay spaghetti all these years later that Sid Vicious wore a fucking swastika on his shirt as a form of anti-conformity, as a form of rebellion? Fucking moron.
Her look and presentation as very confrontational and going against traditional beauty standards. Like, she did not pick this look up because she saw a hot big titty goth girl on the internet. And Jake continues in this conversation to give completely ahistorical and uninformed takes about underground music culture.
I don't know if you've ever met any alternative kids. They're not the most outgoing, right?
They are not.
No.
That's part of the reason why they're kind of looking for the alternative lifestyle.
Right. They're the most non-confrontational types of people. So.
Again, he is correct. So far, because, Homeboy said that he has a complete misunderstanding of the type of individuals that are part of these sort of underground music. So obviously, there's going to be exceptions to the rule. Yes, obviously, you're going to have social butterflies, but by and large, yeah, I would say he is correct. People that are into these, subcultures, and it doesn't even need to be musical subcultures, by the way, nerdy subcultures as well, and notice how there's quite the crossover between kids that, for example, like industrial goth music and also play Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, they're usually, by and large, on average, not the most conversational type of folk.
You could go to the mall and you could maybe have some conflicting ideologies with someone, but you're not going to bring this up because that would start an argument, and that's horrible, right? That's the worst thing ever.
The idea that alt subcultures now have just become more confrontational because leftism has taken over and they have access to the internet, to me, is very funny. Especially,
I mean, but funny or not, it's also true. Due to the advent of the internet, when you can hide behind anonymity, and this goes for both, I hate to be the both sides guy, but this one technically does go for both sides. Yeah, when you can hide behind the internet with anonymity and say and do and whatnot, all sorts of horrible things with next to zero repercussion, yeah, of course that's going to breed a more confrontational world, because once you start living in an echo chamber and thinking that 90% of people agree with you, once you run into the people that disagree with you in the real world, and you think they're a minority, then you think that everybody's going to have your back when you haul off and start instigating or start being, start going at odds with somebody in a combative manner, verbally, physically, whatever it may be, not realizing that, oh, turns out the world isn't your little protective special bubble where you've been, where you've got this confirmation bias. Yeah, it turns out that there actually is a wide, diverse multitude of opinions in the world, and a lot of motherfuckers might disagree with you, and some people handle disagreement very differently than others. So, again, Jake is actually correct here.
Actually, considering that back in the day, these were the same scenes where terms like poser were popularized, where underground gatekeeping truly had its heyday. A time.
Do you know where the term poser came from, Anthony? I'm curious. For anybody that doesn't know, that needs a quick history lesson, the term poser came from the fashion magazine scene and like the sports magazine scene. When people were posing with skateboards, weren't actual skaters, they would just pose with them for the photos. That way they could be put, and not just skateboards, by the way, it really applied to anything, but it was very big in skate culture. But yes, because they were models posing with these things for magazine shots, and they didn't actually, skate or, whatever other aspect of this sort of lifestyle, they were posers because they were posing for the cameras. Do you know that? Or are you just throwing out shit that you think sounds good because you've got an uninformed audience? They're going to hang off your every word because they think that you're Jesus, even though to the last I checked, I don't think that Jesus was a vegan. Really thin, though.
Time when bands as abstract as Sonic Youth were getting guff and getting called sellouts for being on Geffen Records. Also, need I remind you that one of the most popular punk songs of the 80s is literally Nazi punks fuck off?
Uh-huh. And that is because Nazism was, aligned with, at least through their visage, right-wing extremists. So Nazi punks, fuck off. Yes, it's going to be an inherently left-wing song because then Nazism is right-wing. Except when you live in the modern era and the left can call everybody Nazis, but they're the ones who are actually doing the Nazi propaganda shit, trying to, segregate individuals that disagree with them, calling for the death of people they disagree with, marginalize people that don't fall in line with them ideologically, or coons or Uncle Toms or anything to that effect. I don't know. Casually murdering people, shot them through the neck for free speech. That's a pretty Nazi-esque thing to do. So yes, of course, they can call the right-wing Nazis in the modern era, but when you look at actions, which by and large speak louder than words, the left are pretty Nazi-esque. It's funny because Nazi punks fuck off is now actually more of a right-wing anthem against the left, and frankly, I find that irony hilarious.
Which I love that track, from what I can see, I have not heard this whole hunk of shit, doesn't come up in this conversation because obviously that would go against the, woke is a
Actually, no, it wouldn't go against anything. They could easily say what I just said 2 minutes ago, and then the conversation would move on. It isn't even worth bringing up because it's irrelevant. What Nazi punks fuck off meant back in 86 or what the fuck ever doesn't matter in 2025 because the cultural landscape is entirely different.
Recent thing narrative. And if any band today, made a song that was like a punk song or a goth song or whatever that said, Nazi punks fuck off, that would be woke.
It's just like we're so...
It depends on the context of the Nazi punks fucking off. If they're targeting that song at the left, wouldn't be woke whatsoever. Because again, when it comes to the actions, they do exhibit far more Naziistic tendencies.
Angry and hateful, and we do such disgusting, awful things. How can we justify this? How can we still be on the right side of history? Oh, that's right. We'll just call them Nazis. So we're just going to call them Nazis, and we're going to call them fascists. And so when we act the way that we're going to be acting, we can still feel good and go to bed.
You know what? I'll give Anthony Fantano a small bit of credit. I actually do mean this unironically. Because I was listening to Jake Munro on his video yesterday. Again, check that stream out if you didn't see it. And he was censoring the word Nazi, which again leads to the softening of language, which means that you're not going to get your point across. At least Anthony Fantano actually fucking said the word. So I'll give him credit there, because yeah, say Nazi. Where does that fucking meaning? I mean, Nazi doesn't have any meaning when the left uses it, but it's neither here nor there.
And fall asleep and dream about communism.
But yeah, despite there being very clear evidence that subcultures and underground music of all types and stripes have always had very strong opinions about who was in and who was out, Jake insists the only kind of gatekeeping that was happening back in the day is name 3 songs,
No, that is not what he's saying. That's not what anybody says. He is making the same assertion that I have made a myriad of times, which is, if you had differences of political opinions, we just didn't fucking murder you for it. We didn't beat you for it. And it really was that simple. And by the way, it should be that simple. Maybe it's not the correct course of action to physically, violently beat a motherfucker for disagreeing with you on, again, cutting the 12-year-old cock off of Timmy. Yeah, that's a pretty radical position. That one, you shouldn't have someone, beaten near to death because they think that's a bad idea. But again, no, things were much more tame. Was there gatekeeping? Again, there was, but people didn't have such radical differences of opinion as to what to do when it comes to chemically castrating children back in the day. That just wasn't really part of the conversation. Again, Anthony Fantano is in fact a dumbass. Either that, he's either a dumbass, or even worse, and probably more likely, he is intentionally obfuscating the conversation to make himself seem so much more rational than he is, because notice how he hasn't actually pointed out any of the political beliefs that the left has, any of the incredibly radical political beliefs that you have, which did in fact lead to the re-election of Donald Trump. Now, whether you like Trump's second administration or not, I'm gonna be real, it seems kind of like a wet fart to me. I think things aren't going the way a lot of folk want them to go, but that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is, I will still take Donald Trump's wet fart presidency than I would, again, cutting the cocks off 12-year-old boys.
Susie
I'm gonna keep driving that point home.
in the Banshees songs that aren't on Juju.
And the gatekeeping we had was, name 3 songs. Oh, you like Susan and the Banshees? Name 3 songs not from the Juju album.
That's such a good point. And now it's, can men become women? If you don't, I'm going to just destroy your life.
Yeah, and I pointed this out.
And you want to know why Brian used that exact example? Because that's what the fuck happened to him. Wife left him, career destroyed, he's a pariah in the fucking industrial goth spaces. All because he questioned whether or not we should actually be transitioning children. Yeah, that seems rational. It's interesting because when you hear Brian say that about transitioning children, you think, oh, maybe he's being hyperbolic. No, he lost his entire career and fucking marriage because he questioned that. So I really don't want to hear shit from Anthony Fantano when the world's busiest music nerd didn't do the bare minimum to look into who Brian was, who Gasoline Invertebrate was, and just so blatantly referred to him, not even via name, but just as text on screen that says, the third guy.
Actually figured out why they shifted this.
Why's that?
Because they wanted goth to be political. They wanted to gatekeep based on politics. Goth music is not political in any way.
Which I have a better challenge for Jake. Can you name 3 gay bars that Susie Sue used to frequent back in the day where all of her boyfriends were girlfriends and girlfriends were boyfriends?
And I didn't go to the hetero top rank places. I'd skip up to town and go to a gay bar or a gay club. Had lots of girlfriends that were boyfriends and boyfriends that were girlfriends, and had a great time. And as I say, it saved my life.
But of course,
Again, but you can still have the scene be an apolitical scene. Well, again, oh, so-and-so's gay. Oh, so-and-so is trans. That does not fucking inherently mean woke. And again, Anthony Fantano has either drank the Kool-Aid and thinks that's what the right's position is, or again, he's intentionally obfuscating it because he knows that's not the case, but if he was intellectually honest about it, he wouldn't be able to adequately make his point. No. The fact of the matter is, yeah, we all pretty much agree, even most motherfuckers on the right, most agree that What you do as a consenting adult behind closed doors is your fucking business. It don't need to be prayed about. It don't need to be codified in any laws that give you special treatment. And it certainly don't need to involve fucking children. And that's a weird place to say fucking. But you know what? I think I actually accidentally meant it literally.
This is information that Jake wouldn't know or relay to the people watching this crappy video and discussion when this is what he thinks of women in the alternative and the metal scene.
I'm gonna upset you a little bit here. Almost all female metalheads are quote-unquote posers, okay? They got it from their last boyfriend. Seriously.
He's right, by the way. He's right. And, I mean, I assume he's right. I can only speak to this anecdotally. But every single heavy metal gal pal that I've ever had or ever met, yeah, they got it from me or one of their previous boyfriends or one of my best friends in the wild. She used to have bleached blonde bottle job hair and wear white regularly, and then she got married to a dude, and he listened to metal, and guess what? Even 7 years after the divorce, she's still all gothed and punk rocked out and shit and still listening to that stuff. But she did get it from a dude. Like, when is the last time, answer me intellectually honestly here, when's the last time any of y'all ever met a gal that came into metal music or hardcore, actual punk rock music? I'm talking real punk rock, not like some Green Day shit, of their own volition. It's quite rare. Not impossible, but quite rare. Now, I wouldn't say that necessarily makes them posers, per se, because if they were introduced to, because you gotta be introduced into something you love through somebody or somehow at some point. Everyone starts off as a tourist. I've made this argument about anime. Everyone starts off as a tourist. But do you become a true blue real fan afterwards, or is it a fad? So, nah, these girls might not inherently be posers, because maybe they didn't know about it before, but they came into it, and they actually did truly love it, and after the relationship's gone, maybe they still continue to listen to it, still continue to love it, and it is actually more to them than just an aesthetic. But I'd say, it very much depends.
So interesting guys with interesting hobbies and interests come along. Chicks are usually just watching Love Island and shopping.
Which, we need to talk about this clip here, and believe me, it's not about what he's saying. I mean, that in and of itself is obviously wrong on the surface. But from the look here, you could really tell this man has very few or maybe no alt or goth women in his life, because if he did, they would do him the favor of being like, dude, your makeup is trash. You look like the fucking I Like Turtles kid. Look.
As somebody that is, hold on a sec.
But from the look in his life, because if he did, they would do him the favor of being like, dude, your makeup is trash. You look like.
This is a very common look in the goth scene. I many a person, male and or female, that dress like this, that look like this. It's the makeup honestly isn't trash. It's not the most perfectly done, but again, that's kind of the point. As such, it's very low-hanging fruit. Again, low-hanging fruit from a guy that looks like this.
Like the fucking I Like Turtles kid. Look, this isn't body shaming. I'm not calling the guy ugly.
Notice how he is so afraid of his audience coming after him for possibly saying something negative about somebody's looks. He has to do the clarification. He has to try and qualify his statement, because it doesn't matter. Even if his audience agrees with the idea that Jake Munro should be named and shamed and should be shunned and should be called out, hey, we still have some rules here, and we gotta follow those rules, otherwise you're just as bad as them.
What we're talking about here is a choice. This man woke up and volunteered to make himself look like the I Like Turtles child. And I just think no one is telling him because no one loves him. To kind of close this conversation out, there's another clip where Jake is whining and moaning about artists like Hayley Williams, the great, talented, fantastic Hayley Williams, who recently made a statement about how she doesn't want, racists at her shows or supporting her music in any way. And Jake's just like, what's the point of that? You can't literally make sure people like that aren't going to your concerts.
And Jake is correct. Factually, he is correct. So what this is a virtue signal. So when Jake says you can't act physically gatekeep these people from your concerts, what he's saying is, why make the virtue signal statement when it is clearly hollow, empty words just meant to get virtue signal points from the press and on the internet? Again, it's very simple if you think about it for 5 seconds. I really like this pause here because I can imagine that this is the way Anthony sees himself in his mirror. He must have one of them funhouse mirrors, but he doesn't realize it. He thinks his brain is just that big.
Haley Williams just came out and sort
I
of
saw
spewed the
that.
same rhetoric where it's just like, I don't want these people at my shows. And it's just kind of like, please just lay out just some of the basic foundations on how you're even going to curate the fans that come to your fucking show.
Yeah.
There's no way you can enforce this.
imagine-
It's a virtue signal.
I imagine it boils down to don't wear Make America Great Again hat.
Yeah, but then you can go and then be like, woo, yeah, like Misery Business, what a great track. And then you go into the ballot and you vote Trump again.
Yeah.
Like, what does it matter?
Which, like, no.
Again, he is objectively correct. How you gonna fight this one off, Anthony? Because this is impeccable logic. Yeah, again, you can like gay music like Paramore and still vote Donald Trump. I know plenty of people who like gay music like My Chemical Romance and Panic at the Disco still vote Donald Trump. And here's the dealio. You guys gotta stop listening to fucking My Chemical Romance and Panic at the Disco. Guys, they fucking blow, bro.
Artist is putting out that statement thinking that that's literally what they're doing. They're just communicating hostility toward people.
No, they're not. Communicating hostility is your fancy obfuscation for, say it with me, class, virtue signaling.
Who they don't want in their audience, which, I mean, even if it doesn't have a 100% success rate, believe me, it does work. I am quite hostile toward conservatives on social media and in my videos on a regular basis, and partially that is as a means of keeping them out of my comment sections.
Yeah, but here's the thing. And you know what? This is the brilliant difference between conservatives and leftists. Coming from somebody who, by the way, is not a conservative, no matter how much the guy probably doesn't want to paint me if he sees I make this video. Sorry, anarchist. But anyway, conservatives, by and large, don't give a fuck as long as the content and the products that are being offered to them are of quality. Conservatives aren't watching your content because it is not of quality. It is just a reinforced echo chamber of your beliefs under the guise of music criticism. That being said, I know a whole lot of video games that are fucking awesome video games that I'm damn sure the people that make them have morals and values and political opinions vastly different from mine. However, I ain't gonna stop playing those games because they're good fucking games. And I know a lot of people, the vast majority of people, in fact, who are on the right or the center or libertarian or anarchist, pretty much anything other than, you know, just like left of Bernie Sanders, that make that same judgment call of, I can separate the art from the artist. The left, by and large, can't do that. At least not the ones that are so far gone as you, Mr. Fantano.
Because I don't want them in here being homophobic, transphobic, racist, and so on and so forth. But again, what Haley is doing here is not a new phenomenon. It's literally...
Correct. It's not a new phenomenon. But it's a phenomenon that we're damn tired of because it doesn't fucking matter. And yet it keeps happening.
Giving Kurt Cobain incesticide liner notes vibes, where he famously told racists and homophobes to stay away from Nirvana's shows and to not buy their records. And, I don't know,
Yeah.
to...
The difference being, Kurt wrote this himself in the liner notes of their album, you know, in his biography, whatnot, things to that effect. Haley Williams is getting national news coverage and press in the front page of articles and getting hired on festivals and whatnot for saying this shit for brownie points. And therein lies the difference. You know, one might hold this opinion, but even if they do hold this opinion, they're using it to just further their fame and to further get the accolades and the cheers and the love. And Kurt was more than likely being sincere because, again, he just wrote this in the fucking liner notes. And by the way, Kurt Cobain was also a pretentious douchebag whose music always fucking sucks. And I'm really tired of people pretending that Nirvana was ever good. They never fucking have been.
Stay away from Nirvana's shows and to not buy their records. And I don't know, I think Kurt Cobain's opinion here on these things holds more weight than a guy who looks like a meme from 2007.
Why? Why does Kurt Cobain's words hold more weight than anyone else? Last I checked, we were all equal. And so his opinion would be equal, if nothing else. Again, all right, I guess deify Kurt Cobain. That's, yeah, dude with a crippling heroin addiction that couldn't save his fucking marriage. Which is why his wife killed him, by the way. All right.
Much less this other loser who I don't even want to address in the conversation, who's like the annoying...
Who I don't want to address in the conversation. I take it back. He does know who Brian is. And he's not going to bring it up because he knows Brian's right. He knows that Brian had one hell of a career and he lost it due to the people on Anthony's side. That's why you're not going to address it. You don't want your fucking cult in your comment section asking questions. Because I'm sure even the majority of Anthony Fantano's fan base has the same opinion of, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be turning little Susie into zipper tits.
Little brother in this conversation, and on his album covers looks like a fucking character from Disney's Zombies.
Homie, didn't you bring up, hold on, where was it? Whatever, doesn't matter. Point is, he looks no different than the vast majority of other individuals in sort of like the goth alternative scene. It's a very common look. Again, at least Brian is incredibly in shape. I want to remind you guys that this is what Anthony Fantano looks like when it's not just showing his face on camera. This is our boy Brian. I'm just saying I prefer the Disney look if I had to take a pick.
At Seabrook High. Again, if you guys had goth women in your lives, they would tell you these looks are shit. Okay, I think we're going to leave it there for now. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it greatly.
Oh, trust me, you ain't going to appreciate the fact that I was watching, homie. Before we go, I was torn on which video to react to, because it was this one or this one with Az on the title. And if you guys want me to also react to the Asmongold, the Drake vs. Kendrick of 2025, if you want me to react to that, let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's enough of that. If y'all couldn't guess, or for whatever reason didn't already know, that the internet's busiest music nerd is a fucking joke, then I hope this was informative for you. Literally at no point did he say anything of substance, because not only was he unable to refute the arguments, the so few that he presented, by the way, without any sort of context, and yet they still made sense. Not only was he able to refute them using any sort of basis of fact beyond my feelings, which is all the left can do, but notice how he also didn't actually add any of his own legitimate, political thoughts or opinions, because those would be cancerous given the very obvious cultural shift that we're all existing in. But these are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below, or let me know on X, or you can find me at Bolt the Word, and please do subscribe. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day. Not always about what's going on in the music scene, but anime, movies, music, Magic the Gathering, you name it. Check us out on Instagram at wordsparadise_Leon, and become a member for $4.99 a month. You can join the Discord, choose the articles we go over on a day-to-day basis, choose the videos we react to on the daily live streams, and of course get involved with over 250 other vital idols. We are a bright, beautiful, glowing, vibrant community that I cannot wait to make even further, because we do care about diversity. Only one kind of diversity of thought. That's interesting to you. Join the Discord, subscribe. Until next time, it's all here in the Nerdosphere. This has been Words of Paradise.